Hello and welcome to today's Dab Chat with me, your host Davina from Australia, newish resident of the United States. We're here to analyse Republican rackets and ask the important question, why does the media skirt so lightly over Republican-led scandals? Why is there so much space left for the crazies to, oh, that doesn't sound right. For vulnerable people, for intellectually vulnerable people to hook onto crazy QAnon conspiracy theories when there's so much evidence of behind the scenes mutual back scratching relationships between the uber wealthy, people who subvert the democratic process in order to win themselves subsidies and significant tax benefits. And I'm talking about, yes, people like no longer wealthiest billionaire on the planet, Elon Musk, who's fallen in the list of wealthy people today, primarily thanks to his own efforts sabotaging his brand via acquiring Twitter for $44 billion and making every possible effort that he can to mire it in a cesspool of racist, sexist bigotry and pandering to right-wing anti-science, anti-healthcare conspiracy. So, hello, Knowledge. Nice to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, and that's a little icon that looks like an angel. So I think you're saying, hello, angel. If that's addressed to me, why, thank you. So the title of today's show is Media Announcement. Is it media announcement or big announcement? What did I write? Major announcement, because that's what Trump said yesterday. And the rumor mill was churning creatively and people were positing, could this be to do with the Republicans' newly won slender House majority? Are they going to fulfill that earlier suggestion that they would make Trump the speaker? Because the speaker apparently by law does not have to be a sitting congressional member. So you could have somebody who wasn't officially serving in an elected capacity. So was today's major announcement going to be that Trump was hoping to run for speaker and gather 218 votes? But no, Trump's laughable major announcement may just be his latest effort to launder money into his own purse via some kind of non-fungible token, NFT, digital card trading scheme or digital cards for sale scheme, whereby he imitates Kim Jong-un. Let's have a look. Here is Kim Jong-un and his cards that he has with images promoting himself as a grandiose leader. Oh, look, the horse is even trampling on the American flag, because that is the type of thing that cultish dictators in North Korea like to depict of themselves in order to promote themselves as a strong man. So that tubby dictator is on a proud stallion using this iconography of dominance. And I thank the account called Kaja, spelt C-A-J-S-A, if you want to follow her work. I know she compiles a lot of notable Republicans who've committed crimes of assault, typically sexual assault and typically sexual assault against minors. She compiles a lot of those crimes because people in the media often refuse to connect the dots, to point out that conservatives seem to be statistically overrepresented in the lists of people convicted for crimes of abuse of power, involving self-gratification at the expense of other less powerful people. And that's a pattern. It's not to say the Democratic Party is free from people who've committed sex-related crimes themselves or dominance-related crimes themselves. Just notes that there is an abundance of them. They are statistically overrepresented in the list of criminals who've also served as officials in a political party. So thank you to Kaja for her efforts in bringing that to light, and also for sharing with us today some of the screen caps of The Guardian reporting on dictators showing themselves off in little illustrations, much like Trump has done today with his $99 digital cards for sale to his most devoted supporters. And the thing about politics being a margins game is that this apparently has been a line crossed for some of the Trumpists. So we'll look in a second at some of the comments reported on Trump's media platform called Truth Social. So here, yep, more pictures of Kim Jong-un. Oh, Kim Jong-un riding a bucking stallion in the top of a mountain as if he's conquering geography and the elements at the same time. So marvelous work, Kim Jong-un. And it's been noted by a journalist on Twitter called Kurt Eichenwald that the address for the company producing the Trump digital trading cards is a mailbox at a UPS store in Park City, Utah. So will the digital trading cards be produced at all? Are they trying to reduce accountability by only having a mailbox? It's a front for a company, suggesting this is just yet another grifting scheme, and there may be no digital cards for sale at all. Trump just wants the appearance of selling a product. Even something as hard to keep track of as a non-fungible token. And really, he's just setting up a cover story so that foreign dictators who hope to facilitate his path back into power can transfer funds to him and so skirt America's election finance laws that try to safeguard America's interests by preventing foreign wealthy people and foreign governments from funding a candidate of their choice to succeed at the American ballot box. So that's exciting evidence of there not even being a real company behind this major announcement of newly for sale digital cards. So that is interesting news, which is why I shared it. And then what else have we got today? Oh, yes. So somebody else called ADHD Wonder Woman. I wonder what platform they are on. It says thumbs up, share, or tip. I wonder if it's post. If anybody recognizes this kind of social media setup, don't hesitate to let me know. But yes, ADHD Wonder Woman notes even his most devout boomer followers aren't buying $100 digital trading cards for themselves or their grandkids. He's using this as a front to funnel foreign money in through the decentralized, unregulated NFT market. Really, stop and think about it. So that's who I'm crediting this thoughtful comment to, ADHD Wonder Woman. Somebody screenshotted her comment from another platform. And now we're going to have a look at some commentary from Truth Social. So somebody's saying, F him, I'm done with Trump. If this is the major announcement, I'm done. It is now beyond any doubt whatsoever that Trump was a chaos and now demoralization agent for the NWO. And that means New World Order. It's an acronym for people au courant with the lingo. Au courant is French for in the running, in the know. With the idea of there being a new world order. People who subscribe to that idea typically put Jewish people at the top of a secret pyramid. What did they call them? Something beginning with PH. No, the Elders of Zion. That was how the conspiracy was framed during Hitler's era. And the Elders of Zion, and they had this fleshed out, creative descriptions of this so-called conspiracy People making things up to scratch that itch of finding someone to dislike more than they dislike themselves, someone to hate more than they hate themselves. And fascism is fundamentally a way to weaponize human beings' capacity for othering their hatred. Instead of dealing with their self-hatred, deflecting it, sublimating it into a hatred of the other. Ooh, sublimating is a good word. I'm going to write that down to remind myself to do something else with it. Fascism, a way to profit from the mass sublimation of hatreds onto scapegoated, a shifting target onto a shifting target of scapegoated minority groups. Oh, that reminds me. I'll go back to this topic because there's a famous poem by, Martin Neumeyer? I don't remember how to pronounce his name. Everybody's probably heard at least a little bit of it once in their lives. Martin Niemöller. The poem is something about when they came for me. It starts with first they came for the socialists, because there's a very thoughtful person on Twitter. Okay, so Martin Niemöller was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany. He initially sympathized with many Nazi ideas and supported radically right-wing political movements. But after Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, Niemöller became an outspoken critic of Hitler's interference in the Protestant church. He spent the last years of Nazi rule from 1937 to 1945 in Nazi prisons and concentration camps. Niemöller is best remembered for his post-war statement, first they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak for me. It is sometimes mistakenly referred to as a poem. Okay, so it's not a poem, it's a quote. After World War II, Niemöller openly spoke about his own early complicity in Nazism and his eventual change of heart. His powerful words about guilt and responsibility still resonate today. And that quote has been part of the permanent exhibition at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum since its opening in 1993. Okay, but to go back to what I was saying about a prominent, somebody insightfully saying on Twitter that there's a nuance that a lot of conservatives miss. They take that quote at the very shallow value. By the time they get to you, there'll be nobody left to speak up on your behalf, but that's only half of it. Because what fascists are doing is using your hatred of the earlier groups to build up the power they need to turn to you later. You're giving them the gun they're going to use to shoot you. So the way the quote works is that the person hates those initial groups and is glad that they are being targeted. And when you give power to fascists, when you allow them to exploit your irrational hatreds, you are giving them the power that will one day be used to harm you and harm those you love. I'm writing that down so I remember it. With fascists, the thing is with fascists, if you allow them to take advantage of your irrational hatreds and you allow them to influence you, to co-opt your ability to think and evaluate by bombarding you with negatively twisted stories so that you somehow suddenly hate Meghan Markle for for reasons that you can only poorly explain, or that feel very common sensey to you because you've heard multiple sources present this slant in multiple different ways. So it feels very grounded in reason, not irrational. You'll defend it with your life, potentially, that you hate Meghan Markle, that you think Jews are behind things, or any number of series of shifting targets, that you think drag queens are a threat to the social fabric, or that trans people are coming for your children. Yeah, they will exploit your hatreds. They will exploit your gullibility, and they will use the power you give them to harm you, to harm those you love. But here we have, at least the good news today is that some Trump supporters some of the cult members are turning on Trump because of this new grift is anticlimactic for them. It is a letdown. So to read from Truth Social, someone called Yardape says, folks in real need, and this is the egotistical bastard's announcement. Someone else says, I hope the Trump cards are not the big announcement. So that's people being like, what? Can this really be true? Bunch of BS to make money, why most of us are struggling. And someone notes, that's your boy. Oh, and here's the original source for the quote. It is now beyond any doubt whatsoever that Trump was a chaos and now demoralization agent for the New World Order. We've all been played. I'm tired of making excuses for him. I guess I will never stop having some tiny sliver of hope that all of this is part of some grand plan. But at this point, I'm refusing to be a sucker anymore. So that's nice. That's what we want. Oh, Christopher's here. Hello, Christopher. And Molly's here. Hi, Molly. So everybody's saying hello to each other in the audience. Hello, hello. So yes, I might go and see if I can find that account that was, his name is Sean Kelly at Story Slug. And his insights, what? All right, we'll just go at Story Slug then. All right, so he's a freelance writer, haver of Batman opinions, watching my overly long deconstruction of a poem go viral and remembering the time a Tinder date told me I was professorial. That would be nice. Wow. This is just a side note, something I've come across on Story Slug's feed. The oldest documented ragdoll in America is called Bangwell Putt, made in Massachusetts for Clarissa Field. And now at the Pocumtuck Valley Memorial Association. Clarissa, who was born without sight, kept Bangwell all her life. Let's have a look at this doll. Well, it would be less terrifying if you didn't have vision and it was something to cuddle. And that's why I guess the doll is faceless. But it's the oldest documented ragdoll in America. Exciting. Someone said, oh, as Sean Kelly said, honestly, I'd assumed it was no longer possible to snag this level of virality without an $8 check. Well, that's always been the exciting thing about Twitter, is the ability to send small accounts viral if they hit a nerve. All right. So yes, the poem starts off with, first they came for the trade unionists. And it's very important to note that the way this poem works, or this quote from Martin Niemöller, is that in the poem, the person hates trade unions and is glad that they are coming for them. Each line of the poem is that fascists working their way up through marginalized groups. Is that a lot of people agree that, oh yes, those groups are going too far or they're a problem. And so at each line, the fascists are accumulating the power necessary to get to the next rung of the ladder. This poem is directed at the sort of people who will aid the fascists, even though they're part of one of the categories the fascist hates, because they think this will spare them. It never does. You see Ben Shapiro trying to thread this needle right now, trying to decry anti-Semitism while still attacking LGBTQ people. Like, he can ride the fascism train up to one specific stop and it won't go any further. You've got Jewish fascists, gay fascists, disabled fascists, all perfectly happy to throw trans people under the bus, throwing around the groomer line because they think they are safe as long as the ire is directed elsewhere. But that's not how it works. The fascists will climb to power on the backs of the trans community, and then they'll immediately turn to gay people next. And sure, the gay fascists will be like, hey, what gives? But it will be too late. It's about accumulating momentum and power. It's about heating up the water slowly enough so that the frogs don't jump out. And these particular frogs are helping to heat the water, thinking it protects them from being boiled, even though they're hip deep in it. These naive numbskulls think they're building a newer, more modern fascism, an inclusive fascism that will allow for whatever type of thing they are to be on the winning side of it. But fascism needs an enemy to perpetuate and thrive, and they'll get to you eventually. Sure, they'll ally with hardcore Zionists against the Middle Easterners for now, because people are generally pretty intolerant of Muslims and they need the money and support. But they've never stopped hating Jews, not really. Liberals aren't immune to this sort of blinkered thinking either, Sean Kelly writes. We see it a lot with the discourse about red states, about letting them secede or what have you. They think they're punishing conservatives when really they're empowering them. Texas is going to Texas, they say, when states start imposing draconian laws, thinking they're safe in California or Illinois or New York, until electoral effery in one of those lost red states is the tipping point for control of the House. Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And this is the kind of thing you've got to be cognizant of. Fascism starts small and starts with people and in places you're inclined to ignore. Every electoral cycle, you see some candidates flirt with this, some Democratic candidates flirt with this. Conversations about needing to return to kitchen table issues instead of talking about gender pronouns. And Sean Kelly suggests that that's really just talking about letting some injustices slide to win an election now. But focusing just on the economy, he argues, is a fascist trap. It cedes the conversation on trans people to the conservatives, who'll keep talking about it, even if you refuse to speak up to defend the downtrodden. And then they're the only ones controlling the narrative. And then, firmly in control of the narrative, they go after the trans people and tell voters that they're the only party defending against the genital mutilation of children. And they'll get votes off of it, off that issue the Democrats didn't want to talk about. And of course, they're coming for the unions too. And the Democrats, well, I know why they decided that sick days for railroad workers was an acceptable sacrifice to avoid looking bad around Christmas. It would have economically hurt a lot of people, actually. It's not just about looking good. So I disagree. Sean Kelly is a little bit to the left of me in terms of his perspective on that, because a rail strike, I think rail workers should have sick days, and I hope future negotiations can succeed. But yes, bringing rail transport to a crunching halt before a busy time of year would really hurt a lot of industries, a lot of businesses, including small businesses that do a lot of their trade that pays for the rest of the year during this period of time. To return to Sean Kelly's points, said that they're testing the fences all over the place, seeing which spots we're weak on, which groups will neglect to defend, where there are holes they can get through and grab control. Unless you're a straight, white, able-bodied, employed, bloodthirsty, and vengeful Christian, the fascists will get to you eventually. Until it's your turn, they want you on side, because at least for now, we're a democracy and they need the numbers. But that'll change. This is why you have to speak up about everything, no matter how trivial, no matter how irritating it makes you think you sound. When fascism shows up, you can never let it have a comfortable seat. In the version of the quote, some write that he starts with communists or socialists. There are a lot of different versions out there. What's the official one? Socialists. First they came for the socialists and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. It's a good quote. Knowledge is on TikTok now. That's good to know, Knowledge. That's where you do your drumming. I want to get more into music, and I don't know, music is, songs are poetry with an additional element that moves the human heart. And when you help to change the cultural dial, you help to change the culture. And the culture needs a lot of safeguarding, protecting, and changing. It's a work in progress. And when we give up and we stagnate, it doesn't just make us safe and things predictable. It can also mean we surrender to the worst part of ourselves. Life is about maintaining that balance between retaining the comfort of the familiar and not allowing ourselves to succumb to our worst, not being so passive that the worst amongst us gain access to power and then hurt other people and then hurt us. So I don't think I retweeted any of Sean's exciting thread, so I will retweet some of it. Here we go. He's got 11,000 likes, which is good. Good value, Sean. I hope you've enjoyed the experience of going viral today and having your thoughts be widely disseminated and share. Someone called May wrote that Naimola's prose is warning, confrontation, and confession in one. None of which is generally noted by conservatives, for the most part because it's three core predispositions: hierarchy, sociopathy, and authoritarianism. We rarely study. Martin Naimola learned the hard way that authoritarians never stop targeting. He learned that once in power, the system they instigate is one of abuse of all. He learned that authoritarianism abides no privilege whatsoever, not even of those who enable it. So Naimola, a German theologian and Lutheran pastor, imprisoned in the Sachsenhausen and Dachau concentration camps from 1938 to 1945, so that's 7 years, narrowly escaping execution. Like most pastors, Naimola was a national conservative, a self-identified anti-Semite, openly supporting the conservative opponents of the Weimar Republic. He welcomed Hitler's accession to power in 1933, believing that it would bring a national revival. Authoritarianism might proclaim itself as willing to abolish privilege, but it abolishes the rights of everybody who comes in its path. And Germans suffered, the continent of Europe suffered. Matt Walsh is a conservative nowadays who's pretty openly a fascist. I'll have a listen to his tosh. He went on a white supremacist rant about how the Spanish slaughtering tens of thousands of indigenous people was good because they were a morally inferior civilization. The reason why I'm playing it is not to amplify his work, but to raise awareness of the morally bankrupt philosophy that underpins these type of people. And these people have a lot of power. As Sean Kelly was noting, this power seeks to find areas of momentum. It seeks to find consent in your passivity, in our passivity. It is always looking for our weaknesses of what we will allow to be done to others, what we will be too tired or unsure about to bother opposing. So we do need to work on our own clarity, and part of that clarity is formed by listening to the extremes of their utterances with courage and with a framing of we're not listening to it to endorse it. We're listening it to properly condition ourselves to oppose it so that we can be clear in our condemnation.
We say, well, all cultures are equal. You can't judge any culture. No culture is better than any other culture. That is clearly not the case, as evidenced by the human sacrifices among the Aztecs. The Spanish culture, the Spanish who conquered the Aztecs, their culture and their civilization was clearly better.
Dude, he's saying this hoping that you didn't learn in school or that you can memory hold the vast numbers of people that the Spanish conquistadors are slaughtered. That's not human if that's not human sacrifice, what is? They honestly sacrificed a lot of people around the world to their goal of acquiring wealth and power and territory and influence.
Than the Aztec culture. And this is me talking now, not Ben. The Spanish culture was superior in every way, but they had not advanced anywhere near as far as the Europeans had. But when I say that the Spanish civilization was a superior civilization, I mean primarily morally. It was a morally...
Morally. So we're saying, yes, the culture responsible for the Spanish Inquisition, for like ripping babies out of their mother's arms and leaving them to perish from exposure in order to demoralize and so better subjugate the native peoples who they were conquering in different areas of the world. That's morally superior. It hurts me to listen to him, but I know I need to as an exercise, because if you don't know your enemy, then you can forget and you can very easily get distracted and put your energies into less worthwhile things. Whereas protecting our communities and protecting civilization from the destructive influence of people like this who use their words to denigrate others, even if it's, oh, they're just denigrating historical other cultures. No, he's denigrating non-white, non-Christian cultures now. He is glossing over the amoral, morally bankrupt activities of a lot of the colonialists of Spain, the people acquiring territory, the people trying to expand the empire, the people whose goals were not to bring Jesus to the world because they didn't want to bring peace. They wanted to bring a hierarchical system in which they could exploit the labor of others. They could steal the possessions and the land of others to enrich themselves. And that's what he is trying to sell here as a worthwhile, superior civilization, because he also wants people to remain on board with that idea of vulture capitalism that runs on exploitativeness and is unbothered by the need to regulate and protect the interests of the humans on planet Earth, but particularly humans other than him and people he identifies with.
superior civilization.
Blah, blah, blah.
The Spanish weren't perfect by any means.
Oh, he's acknowledging that. Hooray. They weren't perfect.
And they did practice they practiced slavery. But then again, every single.
Oh, we'll allow for that. They're not perfect. They ripped people's autonomy and freedom from them to enrich themselves. Yes, they practiced this little doddle of a thing called slavery. Sure.
Single civilization in the world in 16th century.
Oh, but everybody did it, so it's not that bad.
We practiced slavery, so that's not much of a surprise. None of that compares to the Aztecs, though. It's okay for us in the West to admire and honor the great men who built our civilization. Men like Cortez.
See, people like Matt Walsh are suffering from the lack of ability to find heroes anymore. They can't find heroes because, yes, a lot of people who some forms of history have glorified. The founding fathers, hooray, hooray, many of them owned slaves. Industrialization, hurrah, hurrah. But the rights of the workers were often compromised, and people were often forced to work in life-shortening conditions. He wants some heroes, and he cannot bring himself to share heroes. So he cannot just adopt a hero of color. No, he's narcissistic enough that he has to find heroes who share his skin color and share some of his religious background. So for that reason, he has to try and twist history into a pretzel shape that accommodates his need to have his whiteness and his weirdly shaped identity at the top of a pyramid. Yes, a lot of evangelical Christians also have low acquaintance levels with history.
As for instance, they were flawed. You know, they certainly were flawed. And Europeans were guilty of atrocities of the.
There's an expression, damning with faint praise, which means giving somebody a compliment that is essentially an insult because it's so weak. So saying to someone, oh, this story you've written certainly has a large number of words in it. Like, really, that's an excitingly large number of words you've put into this story. So it's such faint praise that it highlights the criticism that you mean to communicate, that you can't find anything positive to say about the story other than it has many words. And he's doing the inverse of that here, which he is valorizing the Spanish by mentioning their grave moral failures as sure, some tiny flaws that everybody did anyway. Unsurprising, blah, blah.
Their own. But nobody tells Native Americans that they can't be proud of their heritage. Nobody tells them that. Even though in the case of the Aztecs and many other Indian civilizations, they were guilty of just barbaric atrocities. But no one tells Native Americans you can't be proud of.
Is he? Okay, he's conflating the Aztecs with Native Americans.
Of your past, and you can't have your own heroes that you looked. By the way, when Cortez launched his final siege of the capital city,
he could have Martin Luther King as a hero. He could look up to James Baldwin. He could respect Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman. But he's like, no, I have to have white heroes. And you've taken Christopher Columbus from me, so I have to try and sell them to you as somehow virtuous.
Where what is now Mexico City. It's true that ultimately the entire city was destroyed and almost every inhabitant was slaughtered. But most of the wholesale slaughter did not happen on the part of the Spanish. It was on the part.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm glad the person who put together this video has put up some text to highlight the falsity of what Matt Walsh is saying. So Matt Walsh is saying Cortez is not responsible for the slaughter. And they're saying, while Cortez did have allies, he ordered his men to block all exits from the square and slaughtered unarmed citizens. They killed between 3,000 and 30,000 people in a matter of hours. This is good to know from someone who's
part of the Indian allies of the Spanish, who had been oppressed for years by the Aztecs, and so they wanted vengeance. And so the other Indians went into the, they.
All right. So he's trying to valorize somebody called Cortez. Yes, I do need some water, Christopher. You are right. What I'm going to do instead is go pick up the kids, and I do need water, particularly when I've been talking for 40 minutes. Oh, Jane is here from Ceramic Art. Hello, Jane. That's exciting to see you too. Sorry, I didn't pick up on that before. Hello there. Well, let's get rid of this dude. Thank you to everybody who look. I'll close with something else Matt says, which is that he claims that nobody has pronouns. You can't have a pronoun because you can't have a preposition, and they're not pets or accessories. Well, you can accessorize your pronouns because modern technology and modern medical science has allowed people to customize their appearance and customize their gender presentation to a larger degree than has ever been possible before. So yes, people can accessorize their pronouns. But as Sean Kelly was noting before, this pattern of fascism, this pattern of fascistic strategy to build on some people's gullibility, to build on some people's unprocessed guilt. Like Matt Walsh can't cope with not having any white heroes to look up to. He could look up to John Brown, but no. He deals with his unresolved guilt and shame by engaging in historical revisionism. And then fascism teaches you to quell your own anxieties and to quell your own negative emotions by trying to build momentum and build steam up in an escalating political movement that's main strategy is to weaponize hatred and weaponize passivity in the face of hatred and scapegoating target groups. Shifting target groups. Today it could be trans people, and then once they've harmed trans people enough, or once they've gained enough power from building up on the back of the energy of hatred. You know how you can split an atom bomb and generate hatred? Well, when you split apart civilized consensus to be nice to each other, to respect each other despite differences, to put aside narcissism and say, you're different to me, but I can respect you. That adult, mature way of existing. Fascism works by building on the energy of splitting those agreements, splitting apart civilized resolutions to respect difference and to grow beyond the narcissism of self-worship. The narcissistic need to feel united with others only insofar as we feel that we are all the same, based on appearance, instead of uniting around shared values and shared commitment to the common good. Nope, apparently you can't have a shared common commitment to the common good if you ain't all white and Christian, or if you ain't willing to allow white Christian people to dominate a power structure. So yes, the argument has been well made today by Sean Kelly, and I've read a lot of his work out loud, his viral Twitter thread, to say that's why it's so important to speak up, to practice your voice, to clear your throat and practice speaking out in support of whichever marginalized group is being targeted today. In Virginia, Glenn Youngkin was able to build political support and gain office through the power of that atom splitting, of that consensus to let gay people be, to let schools, libraries to have books featuring the stories of gay adolescents or gay people. They campaigned on the false idea that critical race theory was being taught in schools, and they could do that by including the nugget of truth, the kernel of truth, which is that, yes, history is being taught in a more expansive way in schools now. There's much less white pandering, whitewashing happening. You're far more likely to just read that white people did everything nice, that racism ended with the Civil War, and that there were no further problems. And so people who claim that that racism has a long shadow, that there is persistent problems, well, they're just pandering to perpetual victims. Nope. A more honest history is being told, in which racism didn't end with the end of the Civil War, with the 14th Amendment, with the ostensible abolition of slavery. No, there's still loopholes in the 14th Amendment is it the 14th or the 13th? Let's check it. Being exploited anyway, to allow for people to be motivated to imprison others, to disproportionately imprison people from the same demographic that used to be enslaved by white Americans, enslaved and exploited for labor, for profit generation. There is a profit motive to continue to disproportionately prosecute, investigate, convict, and imprison Black Americans so that they can continue to provide their labor, continue to be exploited for their physical labor to benefit corporate owners, because there are many private prisons and prisons now where prison inmates are paid cents for their labor, for days of labor. And that is because of, let's check the 14th Amendment. Okay, yes, it is the 14th Amendment, which forbids the states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and from denying anyone equal protection under the law. All right. The amendment also prohibited former civil and military office holders who had supported the Confederacy from again holding any state or federal office. Huh. All right, well then, is it what's the 13th Amendment? Okay, nice. So the 13th Amendment is the one with the loophole. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So there is an incentive to perpetuate slavery, to perpetuate involuntary servitude. And I guess if I say that, it sounds more accurate, because with chattel slavery, you also it also involves the children of those enslaved. So involuntary servitude is perpetuated by the clause of the 13th Amendment that says involuntary servitude shall not exist in the United States except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. And critical race theory shines a light on the fact that this provides an incentive for the legal system, for those involved, for the imperfect actors employed in the legal system, whether it be involved at a level of policing people and over-policing certain communities, the prosecutors, the judges, members of the jury, that the tenacious hold of prejudice will ensure that an element of the enslavement dynamic will persist, will endure in America, unless there is a conscious effort to wind back the system of private prisons to better keep watch over the application of the rule of law. Because the rule of law shall hold, but it is not all American citizens are granted equal protection under the law, and that is very evidenced by video footage that comes out, the body camera footage from police officers that shows them conducting traffic stops and brutally beating up Black American people, including veterans, including men, women, and children. And certainly we saw that with the vicious and the callousness of the death of George Floyd under the knee of Derek Chauvin and his colleagues who also participated in that act of depriving George Floyd of due process, but also his entire life. So Molly notes that Matt Walsh is an idiot and she thinks pronouns are important. They're someone's identity. Yes, I mean, Matt Walsh is trying to argue that they are immutable. You're born with a pronoun, and biologically that's just not the case, because there are intersex people. There are various biological conditions that can surprise someone who has a feminine appearance but who may have androgen insensitivity syndrome. So they have internal testes and other markers of masculinity that they are unaware of until they see a doctor and it becomes investigated why they haven't had a period. But yes, they have some elements of being genetically a man. So no, pronouns are not immutable. There are biological reasons for people to be gender diverse and sex diverse, and then there are psychological choice reasons for people to lean into one type of gender presentation over the other. And that's part of modernity that you can either embrace for other people. You don't have to be trans yourself if you don't want to, or you can choose to be a fascist and to lean into fear and suspicion and fear-mongering about somebody that is othered by conservative narratives and othered by people at pulpits and othered by commentators like Matt Walsh for the purpose of gaining momentum, from deriving energy from the splitting of the atom of a civilized consensus to live and let live with our fellow human beings and in all their differences and all their varying choices. So yes, thank you so much to those who've listened today and been part of the broadcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Recommend it to a friend if you have. Maybe today's the day I'll be brave enough to look at Patreon, because I think there are people who support me, but when I feel guilty about taking any amount of money, I think there's a few people who still pay $1 a month or so to the Patreon account, and I can draw that money out. I'm not walking away from it. I just sometimes don't want to look at it for a period of months at a time. But here I am still generating content, not only for the people who believe in me and support me, but also for everyone, because it is part of my personal action and commitment to countering the fascist escalation. Because I recognize it. I have familial history that helps me recognize it. My grandmother, I've told people many times, was orphaned at the age of 16 and had to make that grotesque choice of having to abandon her parents at their command when they told her to to escape through a hole in a train carriage that was taking them to a death camp, and that she had to leave them goodbye when she wanted to stay with them and share whatever fate would befall them together. But they wanted her to push to survive and knew they wouldn't be able to make the journey themselves. And that knowledge, I didn't want to look at it growing up. I didn't want to face it or ask my grandmother questions. So I too have felt that urge of wanting to look away and not stare into the darkness, the potential darkness of the human soul. I didn't want to hear about the Holocaust, and I didn't want to know details about what she endured. But she's no longer with us, and I have had the chance to see since then how, yes, eternal vigilance is required, which includes courage and includes the need to lean into your own discomfort and face up to those things which can be hard to accept about human nature. But it's harder to stay in that state of non-acceptance. Your brain will do weird things to you, like Matt Walsh, when you have to conduct the mental gymnastics to make the horrors of white supremacy or Aryan supremacy or any of the worst excesses of human ambition, the desire to dominate and conquer and oppress and kill. When you can't work out an understanding of the world that includes all parts of human nature, then yes, you will continue to suffer and have these contorting influences on your thinking. So I know now it's better for me and better for everybody to work through those emotions, through that horror, and say, okay, I accept that humans are capable of atrocity. And for that very reason, we have to continue to celebrate the good, because we celebrate the good sometimes when we focus on the good to encourage more of it. We celebrate it to support its continuance, but we also must still face with courage the worst of ourselves and the worst of humans. Yes. So Christopher says, thanks for another great show, and that I'm worth far more than what I get from Patreon. Bless your heart, and thank you, Christopher. I am working on it. I do these broadcasts, and I sometimes make notes so that if I want to, I can do more with the words that I think will appeal to others, that I think will shine light on a darkness we need to examine, that will help embolden us and combat some of the demoralization we get when Republicans have a victory or Trump wins office. He's out of office, and you can get demoralized by thinking, well, why isn't it everything fixed now? We ousted Trump. It's not fixed. It's a continual onslaught of Republicans who seek to remain in office or gain office, and they still push those fascist style strategies of perpetually lying and perpetually denigrating minority groups and building up hatred against, now it's LGBTQ people, and calling them groomers and implying that makes children more vulnerable, when what really makes children vulnerable to abuse of power is people saying that membership of a certain class makes your authority unquestionable. So having priests or pastors that you would believe over your own child if your child reported an assault. Having sports coaches who were so revered, or medical doctors who were so revered that they can abuse a system. They can abuse the honor system of just assuming that they're honorable because they have attained a high position or they've attained success. Our false attribution of goodness to those who've achieved financial success or prominence in a field such as sports or the church or the synagogue or any type of societal construct, that is what renders children vulnerable, when they will not be believed if they speak out. So It doesn't protect children to remove books from libraries. It doesn't protect children to smear LGBTQ people as being groomers or to falsely describe, as they have in Florida, any reference to the existence of gay people as being sexualization of children. That's just noting the existence of people with different sexualizations, with different sexualities. It's not to focus their mind on activities that they won't engage in until they are older. Oh, Cosmic Rose is here and says to smash the like button, close the chat window, smash the thumbs up under the window, and then reopen the chat to come back. Thank you, Cosmic Rose. That's awesome. Jane says, has anyone heard from Brian? That's a very good point. I haven't heard from Brian. Wow, it really feels like the old gang got back together again today and that we're remembering those of our tribe. Yeah, I'll look up Brian on Twitter and see if I can find him as well. So thank you, Christopher and Molly and Jane and Cosmic Rose. It's lovely to see so many of you again. Oh, and Knowledge. Lovely to see so many of you again today. I'm grateful that we could all be here together. Thank you too to any replay viewers. And thank you to anybody who ever wants to do any musical collaboration going forwards. I write poetry and I'm not the best singer in the world, but I'm working on it. So if other people are good singers and other people are composers or play musical instruments and they want to work together on any project, hit me up because I believe in culture and the arts having such potential to make a mark and to be important fighters in an ongoing struggle for the good of humanity to triumph over the worst impulses. So thank you, everybody. Oh, there's new comments. Christopher enjoys my singing. Thank you, Christopher. Bless your heart. Molly promises to behave. The older I get, the more radical I've become. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.